Perhaps it's his chill attitude or beautifully simple design, but for a character who appears in less than a dozen episodes, Prismo is immensely popular within the Adventure Time fandom. In this video, we're going to go through every single one of his appearances, give some thoughts on him, and talk about the character in general. Also, I probably don't even need to mention this, but there will be spoilers for large chunks of the series. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into his first appearance in the show.
Everything looks nuts.
Sometimes a well-intentioned wish can lead to nuts.
After a hilariously long-winded explanation of Prismo's time room by Bucco in the Season 4 finale, Season 5's premiere, Finn the Human gives us our first actual appearance of the Wishmaster. Prismo's appearance immediately juxtaposes the inferred power by Bucco's description by having them immediately go on a rant about how nasty the Lich is for wearing Billy's dead body. However, his depiction in this episode definitely shows his disconnection from mortal life through his sheer lack of care over granting the Lich's wish for the extinction of life. This actually more or less changes throughout the series, mostly because of his friendship with Jake. Speaking of which, after Finn makes his wish, we don't actually see any more of Prismo until his more extended appearance in the next episode, fittingly named Jake the Dog. This episode has way more Prismo than before, as the rest of Farm World Finn's adventure is cut up with bits of Jake and Prismo inserted in. It's here that we get to actually spend some time with Prismo as he begins to become fast friends with Jake. From the get-go, he does seem a bit partial towards Jake, as he keeps him from wasting his wish, but as the episode goes on, he begins to almost fully force Jake to make the right decision. But before that, we get some dialogue between Jake and Prismo, and eventually Cosmic Owl, that gives some insight into the character. While I think that the completely comedic tone of this does take away a bit from the fantastic story happening in the Farm World timeline, I still really like a lot about these conversations. Prismo slowly revealing how lonely he is works really well comedically, and I like him trying to get Jake to come up with the right wish, showing that he does really actually care about him. After he just completely screws over the Lich, Prismo sends a permanent invitation back to the time room with Jake, leading to his sporadic appearances throughout the rest of the series. And that's it for his introduction. Overall, were these episodes a good introduction for the character? I guess. I mean, don't get me wrong, these are great episodes, but largely because of the fantastic Farm World plot, and less because of the comedic B-plot that Prismo and co turn into for the premiere second half. I mean, sure, we do get a solid base for the character that Prismo will be for the rest of the series, but he occasionally feels more like a plot device and less of a character in this one, especially since him getting Jake to wish it away makes the Farm World plot not matter at all, at least for the next 2.5 seasons. So yeah, while I like these episodes and Prismo's appearance isn't terrible in them, it's pretty weak compared to some of his other appearances in the show.
What happens to you when we wake him up?
Poof. I'm a goner.
For the rest of Season 5, Prismo has a single mention, being the use of his pickles in the title food of Time Sandwich. And while it is a really solid episode that uses the show's wide range of side characters really well and ends pretty satisfyingly in both a comedic and tonal sense, ending up being one of the best episodes of the show's 52-episode long 5th season, Prismo's not really in it, so let's go ahead and move into the Season 6 premiere, Wake Up. His appearance in this one really isn't built up to, instead appearing in literally the first frame of the episode. The first 3 or so minutes of the season takes place during a Prismo party, an event that appears to be a bit of a common occurrence. Prismo's status as a party deity, not to be confused with Party God, another character in this episode, is kind of established here, and his chill attitude clearly makes him popular with the other powerful beings of the show's universe. We get to see more of Jake and Prismo here, further bolstering their relationship so that his death will hit harder later in the episode. One final thing about this scene is the Lich's return, this time in a comatose state that he definitely won't wake up from and is definitely just as safe as Prismo says he is. Overall, the scene is a nice way to ease the viewer back into Adventure Time after Season 5's finale ended with the bombshell of Finn's dad still being alive a month prior. Wait, a month prior? It's kind of weird to think about cartoons having such small hiatuses back then. I mean, during Adventure Time's run, there was an episode per week more often than there wasn't, and now, especially with COVID, it seems lucky if a cartoon can return from a season finale in under a year. Anyway, back to the episode. Speaking of Finn's dad being revealed to be alive, that ends up being the driving force of this episode, as Finn and Jake decide to try to use Prismo to get to the prison where Finn's father is being held. Besides just bringing into question every single time Finn and Jake have had a problem and didn't just try to use Prismo, this is a pretty solid way to bring him into the episode, as well as a good time to limit his power. How exactly teleporting Finn and Jake is out of Prismo's power, but eliminating all life isn't, is a bit unclear, but I think it's a good move to try to keep the character's friendship with Finn and Jake from being series breaking. It does lead to a bit of a weird direction for the show though, as Prismo somehow thinks that it's a good idea to sacrifice himself for 1,000 years in order to let Finn see his dad. And while Finn and Jake are initially opposed to it, they eventually seem to be coming around to the idea, which is kind of insane, but whatever. Luckily the show doesn't actually have to commit to that because the Lich reawakens and makes the decision for them. Olmia and Prismo sounding exactly the same and just wanting to go home and take another nap is hilarious, then the Lich disintegrating him is perfectly out of nowhere. Seeing Jake's immediate anger over Prismo's death is a great angle for the character, although killing him in his second appearance lessens the blow a bit for the audience. It's not really a super impactful scene as the episode just ends 30 seconds later and the next episode really has no focus on Prismo's death. Instead, we gotta wait 18 episodes for the fallout of Prismo's death in Is That You? And by fallout, I mean purely from Jake's perspective, as the show never bothers to give us any insight into what the death of a Wishmaster would mean for its universe, or the rest of Prismo's friends such as Cosmic Owl. Anyway, despite my grumpy attitude and this video's snarky title, this episode is really stinking good. I mean, like, this episode has so much going against it. It's trying to be way too deep, the premise is way too broad for 11 minutes, it really has no intention of giving proper focus to some of its darker themes, and the decision to bring back Prismo less than 2 dozen episodes later just continues in season 6's trend of refusing to commit to changes made in the season premiere. But yet it comes together to be one of the best episodes of the season. And I know that having both the opinion that they should have done more with Prismo and that they should have left him dead feel like they conflict, but I truly believe that if they were going to go through with killing him, it should have been permanent. But either way, this episode still turns out fantastic. The pseudo deep stuff somehow ends up coming off as good instead of cringy, the darker themes I mentioned end up being answered by Fern's existence later in the show, and the backgrounds and animation throughout this episode give it a feeling truly unmatched by anything else in the series. Prismo's return itself is as confusingly heartwarming as the character, and the episode manages to keep its self-awareness regarding how confusing it is to a relative low. I like Finn in this episode, I like Jake in this episode, and for the small amount that he's actually in this one, Prismo's appearance is pretty cool too. So, is this a good episode? I mean, yeah, it pretty clearly is, but I'm not really sure it's a good Prismo episode. I mean, I guess it is, but Prismo's the third main character, even if the episode is technically about him. And when you're the third main character of an 11-minute episode, it's hard to find much to judge. Overall, I have a lot of conflicting thoughts about this one. There's a lot that I dislike and even more that I love. I could go even more in depth, but we still have like 5, albeit minor episodes to cover, so let's get into those first.
Take this and use it to take care of the ice fin.
Wait, what do you mean by take care of?
Good luck, guys. We're all depending on you.
Later in season 6, Prismo gets another pair of episodes, the first of which being Hoots. This honestly might be the weirdest episode in the series. Focusing on Cosmic Owl, we follow our main character as he falls in love with a dream counterpart of Gunter, eventually accidentally ruining Princess Bubblegum's dream and forcing the events of the comet a few episodes later, all while going through various dreams like Jake taking a photo of Finn with a Lich and his dad, as well as Marceline riding Hambo and Tree Trunks opening up a bag of skulls. Confused yet? This episode is just genuinely really stinking weird, from concept to plot to animation. Prismo is in it though, almost as the most normal element, serving as giving Cosmic Owl somebody to talk to. His appearance in this one is contained to a single scene, basically just telling Cosmic Owl that his crush on Dream Gunter Bird Girl is hopeless. Obviously, this episode's focus really isn't on the Wishmaster, because instead he's in more of a comedic role, being really the only time in the series that that's the case. And yeah, it's the comedic highlight of the episode. The juxtaposition between the love-stricken bird and Prismo is pretty stellar, and the banjo gag gets me every time I watch this episode. I think I either would have put this scene closer towards the middle of the episode, or a second scene with Prismo telling Cosmic Owl that he was right, but for the only episode in the series with him in this kind of role, it's a pretty good Prismo episode. Sorry for going a bit out of order here, but we gotta do some cleanup stuff before getting to the last major appearance. One recurring theme for Prismo's cameos in the last 4 seasons of the show is a character dealing with loss and trying to bring that loved one back through Prismo, as with Magic Man and You Forgot Your Floaties and Simon in the series finale Come Along With Me. And while not doing much besides establishing another limitation for Prismo, it does work to further draw parallels between Betty's and eventually Simon's struggle with Magic Man's, as both lose their loved one to magic outside of their control. Speaking of Betty, Prismo's smallest appearance comes in Skyhook's Part 2 when he's just seen reacting to Betty's crazed speech about preventing the Mushroom War. Really small scene that mainly just serves to contextualize Betty's conquest in the miniseries within the Adventure Time universe. Okay, with that out of the way, we can talk about Prismo's final appearance, and also his final time speaking in the show with Season 7's crossover.
Wow, everything sucks here.
Nah, just kidding. This is definitely my favorite episode we're gonna be talking about in this video. There's just so much about this episode that I love. The general concept is incredibly cool, the art style feels like if Adventure Time had actually gotten its movie, the Lich's return is handled ridiculously well, the episode is immensely funny.
What's wrong with him? He looks possessed or something. Ew, boy, here we go.
And the ending with Finn looking wistfully at his farm world family is seriously heart-wrenching. Despite being the 222nd episode of the show, it truly feels like the series is finally figuring out how to blend together its goofy atmosphere with the serious stories it wants to tell. It's just truly a fantastic piece of the show that is significantly underrated, partially due to it coming in the same season as the terrific Stakes miniseries, and coming right before what is probably the best standalone episode in the show. But anyway you slice it, this episode feels very Adventure Timey while still being a narrative wonder with emotional punch. But, as I'm sure you're sick of me asking, is it a good Prismo episode? Well, no, not really. Besides sporting a new look with an eyebrow and just being generally more expressive, something that I think hurts more than it helps, he's again not really the focus of this episode. I mean, the jokes with him watching Finn and Jake almost mess up are some of my favorites from the episode, but it almost feels like a waste of the character. In his final appearance, he is what he always was, a plot device. I guess to conclude, I should probably address the deceptively negative title of this video that I have pretty much been ignoring while I praise the show for 10 minutes. I think that Prismo's general lack of use within the show is really just a consequence of a really weird problem that Adventure Time created for itself. They made the idea of a Wishmaster, somebody who can't be a quasi-regular in the show due to intense applied power, and then they filled that role with a great design and an enjoyable personality, and then they gave that character the voice of somebody who I assume was either difficult or expensive to get in the studio, hence why he doesn't speak in the last 3 seasons of the show. They really just made this character too good, which is a really weird criticism to have of the show. As far as what I would have done to fix this, I think you either just make a worse character, which is obviously not the right solution, or give Prismo an episode with a similar vibe to Hoots. Probably not another love story, but perhaps something with his boss that he mentioned in Crossover, which kind of felt like it was set up anyway. But otherwise, Prismo's just a neat character with a unique design and a very Adventure Time style of comedy. And perhaps that really just isn't that bad. This has been AmpleSamuel, and I'll see you in exactly 504 hours with another video over analyzing a children's television show. Thanks for watching.